welcome to Writing Right, Episode 3. Today's topic is note-taking, annotating, and perhaps habits of a good reader. Quote, there are so many things in this series that I have to be like, good writer, good reader, menos. Today, and this video is partly inspired by a question from the bibliotherapist Erin Dillman, whose channel is lovely. Please go check her out. So, I have a lot of notes, as I do, and I even took notes on my notes, as you will note. Her question was, how do you pick out what is important in a paper the first time you read through something? And my answer, as always, is gonna be rambly and varied, because it's depending on what you're reading and what kind of paper you're writing. It is important to develop a relationship with whatever you're reading. Not to take it on dates or anything, but instead to have a conversation with the text. That is a grad school word. We call things that we're reading texts rather than books. And a text is not, like a text, but instead a text. This would be a text. These are all texts. You want to be an active reader. There are a few things you need to be an active reader, I think. One, the text itself, and I prefer printed versions, whether you print it out from the internet, if you take a PDF, print it out, you get a text from the library, or you buy it. I prefer to own the things that I'm writing about or with, but that depends, how much can you afford. I usually buy a lot of used books. Or just get it from the library. But having the physical text with you is really helpful, because then you can, interact with the text. You can underline things, you can form a bond with your handwriting and your underlining and all that stuff. I chose this book not for any particular reason, except that I've annotated it a lot recently. As you can tell. So this is going to be examples of how I annotate things. Okay, so being an active reader, I always have a pen and a highlighter, if possible, when I read. I'm at least one. And even if I'm reading an ebook, I will highlight using the option in the Kindle app or whatever to annotate. There is a program developed by grad students for grad students, or for college students in general, called Mendeley, which I will spell out here. I'm gonna jump into habits of a good reader right here real quick, because good readers know, or part of being a good reader is knowing of what to take note. When I was a teacher, I had 12 questions to think about before reading a piece / as you read a piece. And the first one was to get as much, or learn as much about the author and the time and the environment in which this piece was written, because that is going to inform what environment the writer was writing in, what kind of views the writer had, gender, age, all of those form people's opinions about things, genre of the piece, etc. Why do we read before we write? Well, if you're writing a paper, specifically a research paper or a literary analysis or whatever, you are writing in order to say something in a conversation that's already happening about a piece of writing or an idea. And you are joining what is called a critical conversation. And the way you do that is just like joining a conversation in the real world. Imagine there's a group of people talking over here. And those people are all talking about Gandalf from The Lord of the Rings. Why not? Before you jump into someone's conversation, you listen to what they're already talking about and try to build on their existing conversation, don't you? That is the same process as joining an existing conversation about a piece of art or an idea. If you imagine a dining table with people sitting at it, then in front of them is their research. There's an empty chair at that table. You have to read everything that the other people have written in the general conversation, and then you can pull up your own chair to the table and submit your own 2 cents, your own idea, to the rest of the people in the conversation. Things to think about when entering this conversation. Who are the key speakers and writers? who is most frequently referenced in other people's papers? Is it one work that is now considered antiquated? Is it a work that everybody reads and then builds off of? That kind of thing. That kind of stuff. When I write in books, I have a particular set of symbols and note-taking strategies that I use. It's not as formulaic as it could be. Like, I don't have a legend. Just like my bullet journal, I kind of do whatever works at the time. Whatever response the text elicits from me is the response that I give it. So sometimes it's just underlining, sometimes it's a bracket around a text, or a specific chunk of text. Sometimes I highlight a really good sentence, and, you know, I draw an arrow or I'll star something really important. But one thing that I do try to do consistently, especially when I am doing notes for school, is I will highlight a word that I don't know in purple. I try to generally highlight in yellow, or if I'm, you know, being a little more fun, I will highlight or make notes in whatever color matches the cover, because I'm a nerd like that. But generally for school, I highlight in yellow because it's easy and I have so many yellow highlighters. Where's something I read for school? Probably Troilus and Cressida. Yeah, note. Well, this is not gonna work because all the words are defined for you at the bottom. In footnotes. Also, footnotes are important to read. Don't ignore them because they usually have important information. For Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, I had to look up a lot of words when reading this, and I was teaching this book, so I did highlight in yellow. I used black text, and there's 3 words on one page that I didn't know the definition of. Coppola, baize, and cheval glace. Something that I recommend doing is when you don't know the definition of a word, write the definition at the bottom, like your own personal footnotes. One thing I recommend doing to become a better writer and a better reader is look up words you don't know when you don't know them, because that will inform your understanding of the work from the beginning. What do you highlight? Of what do you take note when you take notes? It depends on what you are reading. In fiction, so if you're in a fiction class and you have or you're gonna have to write a paper but you don't know what it's about, that's when you want to take notes about whatever catches your attention. Especially in fiction, anything that you find beautiful, anything that you find moving, what speaks to you? What tells you something about the human experience? That's what the core of fiction is about. Even fiction every piece of work has a thesis. So, I mean, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde has a thesis. I'm not going to give any spoilers away. But it says something about mental health. It says something about the capability for evil that we have inside of us, even the best of people. In research, it's different. You can also highlight what moves you, but if you're researching, that's not going to be as common, and you're reading research to pick up on the existing conversation that's happening, like we talked about at the table. For themes, you're looking for thesis again. Generally, if you're reading a research article, the introduction and the conclusion are a good place to start. Find out if you need that article by reading the introduction and the conclusion first, I would say, because that will tell you, the introduction will tell you the thesis and how it's going to be explained or found. The conclusion will tell you the findings and how it was found. And if those 2 things aren't in jive with your needs, then you can just get rid of that article. You don't need it. If you have not previously seen Ariel Bissette's video on annotating your books, I recommend going and watching that now. But in case you don't want to bother, I mean, it's below. I will paraphrase it for you. Essentially, I understand wanting to keep your books beautiful and pristine. I used to do that, but now, because grad school forced me to, I have embraced marking up my books, and I don't even care about breaking the bindings anymore. I don't know why I used to be so afraid of that. I used to want to have beautiful, pristine books, but watching Ariel's video changed my mind because of what she says. She says that it's so, this is my copy of Why I Write by George Orwell. All the notes in here are mine, and this shows my experience reading this book. nobody else is going to have the same notes. Nobody else will have thought the same things when reading this book. Anybody could pick up this particular copy and find my thoughts within, which is, you know, if you pick up any other copy in the world, my thoughts aren't going to be there. You could buy a brand new copy of this and get a pristine blank copy again. Why wouldn't I want to mark it up and remember my thoughts? So that is one purpose that taking notes in your books accomplishes. It takes some of the pressure off your brain and allows your book to become an extension of your mind. It allows you to write down what you think so you don't have to keep track of everything up here, which people think they can do, but they can't. We only have so much mental space, right? If your book isn't your own, carry around some Post-its and put them in the book and write on the Post-its where you're, you know, write on that. I've seen library books marked up in pencil by grad students. They don't remember to erase them. I mean, it's better than pen, right? So do that at your own risk. What do you want to mark? Anything that strikes you as important. You can't over-annotate your books. I just remembered, the most marked up book I own, probably, is Middlemarch by George Eliot. I spent 6 months reading and marking up this book because I had to write a thesis and I had no idea how to do it. This book is, there's so many different, I tried to have, oh goodness, I really liked that purse. I tried to have a reading legend, but whatever. So eventually I think I gave up on that and just highlighted, you know, whatever happened to stand out to me. The more you mark up your book, the more you're going to remember what you read, because it makes you pause, it makes you underline the words, which usually means you're going to read them again, and this will minimize having to reread the text. Because Erin said she usually ends up having to read things more than once, which is frustrating, and it's a, you know, it's a time issue if you're in classes and you have other papers to write too. You have other things to read, you got other homework, and you should try to be able to have a life in there somewhere. So if you mark up your text with everything that you deem important the first time around, you know what you need to look at when you go back to write a paper. You'll be able to see what you thought was important at the time and your reactions to that, which is what a paper is. It's your reaction to a piece of art. So in research, what you're looking for. If your teacher has already given you the assignment, great, then you know what kinds of things you're looking for as you read. However, most teachers don't give you the assignment until after you've read the thing, which is kind of annoying. So you're going on instinct. You want to look for themes, you want to look for important moments in the narrative or important parts of the argument. So what do I note? First, vocabulary. We talked about that. Next, anything that is repeated over and over again, whether it's in fiction or in nonfiction, is important, because that is something that the author is using repeatedly to make a point, especially in poetry. Any word that shows up more than once, pay attention to that, because in fiction and close reading, you take nothing as coincidence. Everything was a deliberate choice by the author. Also note any phrases that you find particularly well put together, because I will do a video, I think, in the future about when to quote, when to paraphrase, and when to summarize, because those are 3 different things. And so when you want to quote an author is when they have said whatever they're saying better than you could put it, or more succinctly. You may also want to take note of questions that the author asks that they answer later, and definitions that they provide, because maybe their entire purpose for writing is defining a term in a new way. Also want to pay attention to what sources the author is citing, because that shows you where they are in the that shows you where that author is in the critical conversation that is taking place. What to write in your texts. So now we've talked about what to highlight. Basically anything that stands out to you in any way, mark it, because you may find that that is the crux of your argument and you want it in the future. So make a note so you can find it again. What to write in or on your text or Post-its. I write my reactions down. Do you agree with the author? Yes or no? Write in the little, write in the margins. If not, why not? Why do you disagree? Why do you agree? Is this coming into contact with some other reading that you've been doing? If so, great, because you're recognizing the conversation that's happening around a text. Note biases of the author showing up. Is it racist? Is it antiquated? Is it from a certain school of thought? That kind of thing. Also to note is anything that is formatted differently from the rest of the text. So if the text has been italicized in the print, or if it's been bolded, or if it's smaller, or like this, if it's set apart, that's done by the printer for a purpose, and it's trying to draw attention to that, or it's trying to draw the attention of the reader to that text for a reason. So highlight it, and maybe think about for a second why the author has done that, or why the printer has done it, and explain it to yourself on the side, like, this is bolded because bleh. Anything that's numbered, like lists, there's a list in politics and the English language, there's 6 points, great list, they're listed so that you can find them and refer to them more easily. So, all in all, I think most important is to take note or make a note about anything that you think is important, because it might not end up being a point in your paper, but at least making that note when you read it the first time around is going to save you having to look for it later. And when you're trying to come up with a thesis about whatever to write about, what you will probably end up writing about is the stuff that you took notes about, because it's what caught your attention, and it shows what you're interested in about the work. So that's an indicator of what you should be writing about, because you'll know what is in the text and what is there to work with. So I say annotate as much as you can. Have fun with it. Make a piece of art out of your work. Throw your books around. Now that we're done with this bit, I'm going to take you over to the computer and I'll read those questions to you. So, question number 1, close reading hints. Begin by learning a little bit about the author of the text. If it's anonymous, then learn about the time period in which it was written. Number 2, think about genre. Is it an essay, an article, a novel, a play, a poem, a song? Any of those things is going to tell you what to expect in reading the text. Does the text follow those conventions? Does it go outside? That's all important information to think about. That was question 3. Question 4, who is the speaker, or who is the author? Write out everything you know. Number 5, who is the intended audience? So, why is the author writing this? To whom are they writing? What kind of problem are they trying to address? That kind of stuff. Pay attention to the words used. Yeah. Any repeated motifs or words or phrases? What's the style of the work? Is it formal? Is it informal? Is it fiction, nonfiction, whatever? How is the work presented? Is it online? Is it in handwriting? That kind of thing. What is the thesis? You're gonna have to read the thing to figure it out. What evidence does the author use to argue the thesis? And what words don't you know? So that's, 10-ish questions to think about that help you find what is important in the text. A summary of my main points. I'm supposed to give those out. Essentially, highlight whatever you think is important. You can't over-annotate. Read with a pencil or pen in hand, because you want to be able to write down your thoughts as soon as you have them, and that will help you write better, because you'll know what you were you'll know your thoughts, you'll know your observations from when you read it the first time around. It's going to save you looking through everything you've already read for things that you know are there, but you don't know where. Just get as close to the text as you can, develop a relationship with it, look up words you don't know. And when in doubt, just highlight whatever moves you. And try to get a sense of your assignment from your teacher. So that's the end of this video. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you, Erin, for inspiring this video with your question. I would love more questions if you guys have them. I'll see you again soon in episode 4. Thanks very much for watching. Booktsuda!